I'm definitely touched by each of you that joined us tonight. And I see tonight really as a monumental evening. I've been to many of these before, and tonight this feels a little bit different, and I think it's definitely one that I don't believe any of us will soon forget. My theme this year is "And Then Some," and this theme was chosen as a result of me attending the NER Leadership Summit this year with John, and John asking me what my theme was going to be. John has impeccable timing when it comes to that. When you go to these NER events, you tend to do a lot of networking. When you network, there's usually a glass of wine in your hand. And John usually waits until you've had 2 or 3 of them to ask you to just talk about your theme for the coming year. And so I thought about it. I pondered over and over and over again. I probably have 4 or 5 pages of things, if you saw my notebook. And I got back to him after listening to Tom Salomon, our president, and quite frankly, I could think of nothing better than the theme that he currently had, which was "And Then Some." So what I did is I asked John, John, is it okay that I borrow the national theme? And he said, it's your year, you do whatever you want. And so I decided to do that. Now, in choosing this theme, the reason I did that is because every other thing I could think of, they were nice goals that I thought I would want to accomplish, but they were just things to do, none of which I was extremely passionate about. And this is the one thing that, quite frankly, it's what I live every single day of my life. Morning, noon, or night. I can't do anything without doing a little more than what's required. If my wife asks me to make breakfast, it can't be a simple scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. I'm probably going to make a souffle. It's just what I do. Before I get too far ahead, I do want to thank a few people. This is extremely dangerous, so if I don't say your name, I'm over 40, it's late, I'm tired, I might forget a few people. That said, Kurt has driven quite a distance. You've come in from Massachusetts to support me today. I appreciate that. Keith, you've done a heck of a job, and I saw you reading in the other room over there preparing for it. Thank you for, Keith called me many times, running things by me throughout the last week and a half. My wife, I should have started there. Where's Imran? You messed me up here, man. You talked about her before I did, and now I'm all screwed up. That said, thank you. A, for coming. B, for making me look like I'm important. We were at a Christmas party recently, and I kid you not, everyone thought I was some kind of celebrity because she was there. And so, just go with the flow. I have a very good friend in the room in Rhonda Woods, who is not only my friend, but she's also my accountability partner. We are counterparts, both students of the Jared James Enterprises. Hi, Jared. And I went to my office today, and I wasn't going to go. I had an office meeting, I almost didn't go. I went, and in my mailbox was a rather large package. So I opened up the package, and there it was, these cufflinks with Q's on them. And so I put my hand in there again, and there's no note. Didn't even have a return address on it. I had no idea who it was from. So I started trying to think about, well, who likes me enough to buy me something? So I figured, well, let me call my wife and see if she bought these cufflinks for me. And then I was going to call Imran to see if he bought these cufflinks for me. Emron mentioned he had a surprise for me, so I thought maybe that's what it was. And then I figured, well, if it wasn't those two, I would just go to Facebook and post it. But I couldn't understand why I got a message from Rhonda, did you go to your office? Did you go to your office? Did you go to your office? So thank you for giving me something to wear for this evening. I'm also very appreciative of, I know he doesn't want to be recognized, but my good friend Jared James, who came quite a ways this evening to be with us tonight. It means a lot to me. He's very inspirational for me, and my wife will attest to this, that I quote the book and I quote Jared way too much at home, but it's what I do. When it's in you, it's in you. Also, I have a couple of past clients in the room, one of which I taught PMP to, go figure, right? And now she's my competition in the industry for now. But Judy, would you wave your hand and say hello? She's now a licensed realtor. I did one of the most uncomfortable things ever by knocking on her door when she was a physical. I sold her house in record time, and I would have sold it for more money, but you didn't want to push the envelope. I could have gotten $5,000 more. And Nancy Perry, who is more than just a client, but really a dear friend, and she has no idea the amount of change she has actually brought to my life over the years. One of the things that I'm learning as I'm maturing in this life is that relationships need to be nurtured and fostered over time. And it's not necessarily through social media that always will happen. Some people still pick up the phone and call. And so that's one of the things I'm learning to do. Some of you are here tonight because I reached out to you directly. And so that's part of what I'm doing in business tonight. And there's so many people. I mean, I'm really just beyond thankful for all of you who have actually shown up tonight. But Emron has really touched my heart in a very special way. I heard Emron speak. It was a very, very cold, snowy day in New England and eastern part of the country last year. I don't know if any of you remember, we had a rather large blizzard, and there was, I don't know, it must have been a couple of feet of snow. But I guess in the city of New York, they didn't really get all that. But the Inman conference happened to be going on at the time, and there were so many people who that their flights were delayed that Inman decided to open up the live stream to those who didn't pay for a subscription. So I turned on my laptop. I had nothing better to do. My daughter was out of school that day, and I watched the conference. And I heard Inman actually speak for the first time. And I was touched, moved, and inspired. I knew at that time that I wanted to hear more of him at that level, in some way, shape, or form. I had no idea it would be in this setting. As a matter of fact, I had other things in mind as to people who I thought would actually speak tonight. But for other reasons, nothing in life really is for nothing, by the way. And life has a funny way of connecting all the very moments you have in your life to the very moment where you are right now. And so my journey to this moment, this particular moment or snapshot in time, began in 2001. Now, from that point till now, there's a lot of years, and there aren't that many slides, so you can relax. My wife asked me to put a little humor in this. I don't have any jokes for you tonight. I've actually done stand-up comedy before, but I really have nothing funny tonight. This is nothing like that. But in this particular year in my life, my journey began. I took the Principles of Practice of Real Estate course, and I began the journey of becoming a licensed agent. It was also the same year that John Baldock accepted a job at ECAR, am I correct? As our CEO. So our journeys in this particular neck of the woods, he's been in business longer than I have, but here in Eastern Connecticut, essentially began around the same time. Additionally, that year, Now, I've done some instructing with PNP, so I have an idea of what's now involved with that. I have one of our PNP instructors as well, who I've taught with. So I now have a greater appreciation of what people go through when you're standing in front of a group of students who have no clue what a picocure is, etc. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to ctrealtors.com/experts. Shameless plug, Cindy Butts. That said, there's a young lady named Terry Thomas who taught me my first PNP stuff. And she then became my very first manager in real estate. Now, I reached out to Terry a couple of times. As a matter of fact, I called her probably 5 times throughout the course of a week. Never connected, then I ended up just sending her an email. And I'm not sure if she got it, but I wanted her to be here because she was very instrumental in my humble beginnings in this. So I was licensed, and then it goes on to the very next year. I promise you, it's not going to go from year to year. And it is amazing, you know, how life has a way of connecting the moments. And you're going to see how this all comes together very shortly. There were some pretty amazing people in my life. I joined a little company called The Wolf. Anyone remember that company? Some of you in this room were there with me. And someone named Anna Kakuro. That was who I modeled myself after very, very early on. She was super successful, very rough around the edges, if you know Anna Kakuro. But she knew what she was doing. And she did the old school way. She had a Rolodex. And she taught me a lot of what I knew about real estate. She had an assistant, Leah Bourne, who was able to break down what Anna said in a nicer way to me than I was able to actually with her southern drawl. Anyone remember Pauline Ivy?
Of course.
I drive a Volvo to this day because of Pauline. And she was so sweet. I don't ever recall her ever really walking around without kind of having that little walk like this. But whenever I had the opportunity to open a door for her, I did it. She was the sweetest lady I've ever met. And I remember when she lost her daughter tragically. I hugged her, and I'm not a hugger. But that was someone that helped to influence me to who I am today. Tom and Mary Casabria. Your names were on the signs on my way from my home to the office in Gettysburg. More so than Linda Davis's, I thought.
Nice words, just those streets.
It was one road. I took the same road all the way there. And so, again, there was an interesting way I went out. And Tom wasn't really I don't even know who Tom was, because he was barely in the office. I guess the end of the job or something. But he walked in one day, and I'm like, oh, you're Tom. Now I know. John Simlick. He was an auto buff. He loved his cars. He loved to hunt. He loved to shoot things. He loved to talk about his grandchildren. I sent him a Christmas card this year. I drive past his house all the time. And every time I drive by his house, I think about him. And I never stopped to actually communicate with him. So I said, let me just send him a card first. Maybe he might reach back out. Then he called me. We were on the phone for 40 minutes talking. John is up in age. He had a couple of, accidents with hunting and so on, but he's plugging his way through. And John was someone that I modeled my career after. Tom, Kathy Sheldon. When I first walked into that office, they asked where would I like to put my desk. Tom's in the room. Kathy's in the room. I said I want to sit next to Tom. So I sat next to you, to your left. Do you remember that? He was a techie guy in the office at the time. I have since probably gone past him, but he got me started. Joanne Kelly was what I considered to be the fun one in the office back then.
Thanks.
You weren't around for the crossword puzzles there. And the one person in that office that really I remember the most, I remember the time I had to write a contract. We're almost done, by the way. I know you guys, your stomachs are digesting, so you're running out of energy. And I was afraid to write my very first contract. And so I asked a favor. Would you please help me, before my client arrives, put together a mock contract so that I can have it in case I need it, because I was meeting them after the office closed. So Jennifer Philpott completed an entire contract with bogus terms on it, but all I had to do was just basically copy the gist of what was there to the other one. And that's how I got my first deal put together. And so, in my humble opinion, they have very little idea what impact they made on my life. But what I will tell you is each of them went a little bit above and beyond the call of duty. So in this same year, I went ahead and I took orientation, went to the board. Now, though John started around that time, 2001 when I was licensed, I went to orientation in 2002. I don't even remember who John was back then. I didn't know him. And he spoke at the orientation. And we had an interesting conversation, John and I, about ethics, because I think you spoke about ethics, right? That he mentioned that most people probably don't remember anything from that, 5 or 6 years later. Consider the overwhelming amount of paperwork we go through in the very beginning, how much you actually retain. But there was one person in particular that day that I remembered. Tom Switz. Is he still here?
No, he had to leave.
Tom was the president in 2002, and I remembered him as if he was related to me, many years later. He spoke to us that day. I don't remember much of what he said, but I remember the presence that he brought. He was well dressed. He spoke very positively. He gave us some advice, save some money, stuff like that. Join the committee, stuff like that. I think what I probably remember the most about him probably at the time was his glasses. He had some really cool glasses that he retired. He still wears cool glasses. But later that year, I closed my first sale. It was a mobile home. It was $14,000, and I represent the buyer of that home, and the listing agent at that time will forever go out in history for me. It's my first closing, a $14,000 mobile home. But the reason why that listing agent really is someone I will never forget is Marcia White, in my humble opinion, did her job and then some. I told her I'm new. I don't really know what I'm doing here. And I have, in that same year, had other agents cuss at me, call me a couple of things, and say some things that weren't nice. I wasn't perfect. None of them are in this room, by the way. But Marcia White was sweet as pie, and she guided me through every step of that transaction as if she was my mother. She wouldn't let me fail. And so for that, I am deeply, deeply grateful. Once I closed the first one, it was June of that year, 2002, I closed my first one. I went on to close 9 more properties before December of that year. And none of them was more memorable than the one that involved the technology that I was bringing to the table. I was in an office of people who really didn't embrace technology at the time, except Tom Sheldon. But I had a Palm Pilot. I had a Palm Trio. My daughter still plays with that Palm Trio. I still have it. I won't throw it away. But I was at a showing. I remember it's a great story. I was at a showing, and it was a marathon of appointments. And this particular day, the buyer paused at this house. And it was time to move on to the next one, or we were going to be late. And so the alarm on my Palm Pilot and my Palm Trio were going off, telling it it's time to leave, move on to the next one. But this lady was the listing agent. And I don't know how she pulled this off, because it's sometimes having tact in this industry is not as easy as we think it is, because our clients are there. You know, her client was there, she represented the seller, but my client was standing right there. And she somehow managed to coach me on the job and get us to the point of writing an offer. And basically we canceled the rest of the day. And the lesson learned was, sometimes your technology is worthless if you just listen to what your client is actually telling you. They wanted to buy a house that day, and this is the one they wanted to buy, and I was in a rush to get to the next property. She got me to the closing table. In my opinion, she went above and beyond what she had to do with me. I can think of many examples of going the extra mile, and I promise you I'm not going to give you all of them right now. But what I do want to share with you on a more practical note for us as board of directors, all of my board members and executive committee members, staff as well. I can't neglect the staff. If you work for eCar, give us a wave back. There's never been a more appropriate time for us to go a little bit above and beyond what we're normally called to do. That and then some mentality really needs to really take on a higher level of life within our association this year. Many of you know that John has, in fact, announced his retirement. If you didn't know that, you know now. And so, what's happening in my term as president is I now have the pleasure and responsibility of leading an association at a major time of transition. This doesn't happen overnight. This was a process, part of which, Mary Casabria, our immediate past president now, who for the last week and a half has been referred to as the sitting duck or the lame duck.
It's the lame duck session. That too.
At any rate, we had a discussion. So our board of directors this year, we joke around about having someone who's been in business for 44 years on our board of directors. He's been there, he's done that, he's been on the board, he's actually been president. In a year where we are transitioning and we're going to have a new CEO, we found it more important that we surround ourselves with the best this year. Linda Davis is now on our board of directors again, when she was once upon a time our president in the past. We surrounded ourselves with the best because we need to motivate those who are newer. If you hadn't noticed, we have some rather young faces on our executive committee. Our executive board consists of 4 people. Myself, there she is, a president-elect with Mary, not Mary, Marilyn, thank you. A treasurer with Ryan, and a secretary with Matt. We have a 30 under 30 recipient in our treasurer with NAR. We're a young group of people. We're full of energy, we're full of life, we're full of ideas. But in a lot of cases, we can become a little cocky at times. Sometimes we have some pretty bad ideas. Haven't I thrown a bad idea out every now and then, guys?
Yes. Oh, never.
So we surround ourselves with some wisdom, some knowledge, so that we can become better. John took the challenging role as our CEO at a time when our association didn't look nearly as good as it looks now. Maybe John has forgotten the state of our association when he took it on.
No, I haven't.
He had It was a mess. I think Norm Cram can attest to how messy it was, because I think you had to play an interim role as the CEO of our association at one point in time. Am I correct?
Correct.
Were we doing great?
We were not doing where we need to be doing, and we had a real problem.
And we are way better today. As a matter of fact, this association continues to lead the pack, and is one of the most respected associations in the country. Those associations who don't respect us, I know a few, we have now learned that they are behind us in a lot of things that we're already doing. We can actually say we've been there, done that. And that is under the great leadership of John Bolduc.
Yeah.
So at this moment, in about 90 days, it'll be John's 70th birthday, I would appreciate it if you would all just give a round of applause and stand for
Sit down, sit down.
My last point tonight is near and dear to my heart, and is probably the most direct connection I can think of with respect to my start in 2001 and where I stand right now in this moment, 2016, as your president. Tonight I would feel completely remiss if I didn't acknowledge the person that actually tapped me on the shoulder, and this goes back several years ago, and asked me to serve on a committee. The person called me up on the phone, and it seemed to me rather random, and just asked if I would volunteer. I was still building a business, and he wanted me to volunteer. And I really didn't know about committee work and what was really involved with all of that. That person was probably one of the nicest people I know and had a heart to serve them. In 2011, that was when we were in the infancy stages of launching our Young Professional Network, or YPN at that time. There were many, many hours that were spent during that year in preparation for us actually going live January 1st, 2012. And I was, yes, in fact, the pioneer of our Young Professional Network. That Young Professional Network was birthed out of the very first committee that I joined as a result of being tapped on the shoulder by a specific gentleman. In that committee meeting, Member Services Committee, John Bolduc handed me a package from NAR, basically like a startup kit to get a YPN started. I'm still new to committees, and I'm being asked to create something. And so I took the ball, I put together a small task force when we traveled to Rhode Island. And my connection wasn't even Matt Phipps. My connection was Donna Andrews. Hello, Donna. She was then the YPN president of the Rhode Island Young Professional Network. Drove up there middle of the week. I was nervous. I hate networking events. I can't stand them. That's not who I am. People think I love them. I really don't. but I had to blend in, I did what I had to do. And she introduced me to Matt Phipps. I knew of his father, who was an NAR president in the past, and so I thought, why is he talking to me? He's like the most humble dude ever. A lot of energy. And so they helped get us going. And so the very next thing we did is we again surrounded ourselves with key people. Deb Chamberlain was one of those key people. We had several people that we just said, let's glean from as many people as we can and get some feedback. What does our association need? What would they expect from our young professionals? In that room was also that very person who tapped me on the shoulder. Bob Kimball. Bob has inspired and motivated me beyond what words can even begin to describe. Now, Bob passed away last year from cancer. And it was the very reason that I finally had clarity as to who I want to be the keynote speaker tonight. I wasn't sure what I wanted for that. I mean, John kept saying, do you know who's doing this? I didn't know anything. I knew that the moment would become very clear when it was time. It might have seemed like things were kind of coming very last minute, but everything happened in the exact right point in time. The people who were supposed to be here are here tonight. And so, the one person I wanted here tonight was Bob Kimball. Because none of this would have happened for me had it not been for Bob Kimball. The connection, which is really interesting, was Harry Thomas many, many years ago mentioned to me, and it may have been the very first 30 under 30 ever. I don't know when the first class graduated from that or was inducted into that, but I think it was 2002 or 3 that she mentioned it to me and asked if I was interested in moving forward with that. I wasn't even really sure what NAR was. NAR is 30 under 30. What is that? Why do I care? So I didn't do it. I'm confident that if I would have, I would be that 30 under 30 person at the time too. There were very few people back then that were signing up for it. I think I had like 3.5 million in volume at the time. I was brand new. Not too many young 30-year-olds at the time were doing that kind of volume. And so I didn't do it, but I never forgot about it, and I regretted it later, but it made sense later on when Bob tapped me on the shoulder, and then later John handed me this packet about YPN. Next thing I know, the very same year, I find myself in Chicago because they invited all the YPN chairs to go to the Leadership Summit, which is generally for AEs like John Bolduc and their president-elect. I'm being thrown in a room with 2,000 people, and I have no idea what's going on. And I'm not even able to hang around with the one person I came with, which was John Bolduc, because they kept the YPNers completely separate. And so here I am, and my wife knows this more than anyone else. I don't like large crowds. I don't like mingling and stuff like that. I do it because I have to, but I don't like it. And so I was unsure what to do with this, and so someone came up to me, and next thing I know, they're saying, let's have dinner, and before you know it, I'm making friends. The only familiar face I saw there, by the way, was Matt. We bumped into him on the way from the airport, and we shared a cab. And so, starting at YPN got me to Chicago, and got me excited to then go to the national meeting a few months later in Orlando, where I met Emily. It was at that meeting in Orlando that Deb Chamberlain introduced me with Bob Kimball. The two of them together dragged me over to meet Jim Helson. I don't know if anyone knows who he is. He was potentially a candidate for NAR president at the time. One thing led to another. Next thing I know, I'm in someone's suite with people I don't know, but they were important people, I presume, because Jim was there. And all I can think about now is someone tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to volunteer. The question that many of you had, because a lot of you know me and you know my style, was, why aren't you wearing a bow tie tonight? Tonight I wear the tie that was owned by Bob Kimball. His family was gracious enough to allow me to have it when I was talking to the family members at the memorial service. And I shared a little bit about how I have known Bob over the years and how he's inspired me. And he said, "You look fashionable. You would appreciate having one of his ties." I haven't worn it since then. I've kept it in a closet because I knew this would be the night I'd wear his tie. I didn't want to wear this suit, by the way. In my mind, in hindsight, I wish I'd grabbed a different tie, to be honest with you, because this is a Denver Broncos color tie. I would probably never wear it again. That said, I honestly considered not matching tonight because I didn't want to wear the suit. I wanted to wear a different suit. I had a whole different suit in mind and shoes that were really cool and all that. But I figured I had to do the tie justice, so I threw this on, and so this is why I'm wearing what I'm wearing. That's why there's no bow tie tonight, for those who really were concerned. I hope that's a good enough reason for me to not have a bow tie on. So as I conclude, I'm not even going to read all that, that's way too much. I want to, again, thank you, first of all, just for allowing me to serve you, and I promise to at least do the things I swore I was going to do, at the very least, but more importantly, to try to be the inspiration for you guys and others that others have been for me. If any of you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, Shalita, I mean, you're my newest chair, and new in the sense that you literally are almost fresh out of P&P, Principles and Practices of Real Estate, and she's chairing a committee. If any of you need help with anything, please do not hesitate to call, text me, email me, FaceTime me, message me on Facebook, and I'm thinking about perhaps going with Snapchat. I just might miss your message if it goes away too quick. Before I close, I know people generally, when you talk about people who have passed on, they have moments of silence. I hate that. To me, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable for me. That's just me personally. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just some people, if they were watching this right now, would probably prefer something different than just being quiet. So as I sit down, don't clap for me, don't cheer for me, but I would appreciate if you clapped, stood, cheered, yelled, screamed, whatever, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that man there. Thank you.